everyone. I'm Angela Kirkian, your Director of Education at PPA. And today we're going to be talking to Matthew Kemmetmueller about virtual graduations. Matthew, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to chat with you because you've come up with some really great solutions at this time. But first, I want to give people a little bit of context about your business. Can you just tell us a little bit about the history of your business and where you guys are now?
Absolutely. So my dad actually started my business back in 1972. We've been in downtown Wayzata, just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We were there for a lot of years, and then we've actually been in our current location since 1989. So a while. We're kind of, unfortunately, I don't see a lot of these businesses anymore, but we're kind of the hometown photographer. We're the guy on Main Street. We do families, we do weddings, we do babies, we do all sorts of photos. And then in the last 10 years, we've been growing a lot into the high volume stuff. So we used to kind of dabble in sports, is what I always said. Like we had our toes in the water. But after so when my dad ran the studio, our big focus and our attention was always on weddings. And it would be, he would have multiple photographers. We'd shoot multiple weddings on a weekend. That was a big thing. And I got married May 23rd, 2009. And so over 10 years ago. And the first year that I was married, I shot 36 weddings myself, not as a business, just me. And it wasn't the lifestyle I liked, because what would happen is when our weddings, they're during the nice weather and they're Fridays and Saturdays. And so we have short windows of nice weather in Minnesota, and I would work a Friday and I would work a Saturday, and then I would have that wedding hangover on Sunday. And weddings are still something we photograph, and it's the most emotionally invested I get in a shoot, so I enjoy them. But I was getting burned out on doing so many.
Yeah.
And so for us, it turned out that we have the right mindset for volume photography. We were able to kind of break down the steps and the things that we needed to take on that, because it's an entirely different skill set than traditional portrait photography. Yeah. And so we started growing. So 10 years ago, we started kind of doubling down on it. Now, typically in the spring, we photograph around 1,500 teams, is my spring sports season. And 5 years ago, we started doing school portraits, and we've gone from 79 kids to 22,000 in 5 years. So.
Well, we're going to get you back and talk about how you did that on a later EDU segment. Because that's really remarkable, building that kind of a volume business. That's really fantastic. So let me ask you this: how are you guys doing right now? I know, we've been now, I don't know, in our homes for 4, 5, 6 weeks, depending on where you are in the country. How are you guys?
Yeah, it's a weird spot to be. And I think that financially as a business, we're going to be fine. We have, my wife works in corporate finance, so she makes me run kind of skinny in general. And this past year, with all of our growth and the stuff that we're seeing, the projections that we're hitting, we actually did a lot with a little last year because we knew that we were going to have capital investments this fall. So ironically, timing wise, I have saved more, but it wasn't for this. I just happened to have had the savings account when this happened. So we are not in danger of going out of business. We did get our PPP loan.
Oh, you got yours. Okay, good to know.
Yep, it got funded yesterday.
Okay.
So money's in the bank. So we will be back. We will be back May 4th. My staff comes back and we are at full speed again.
Wonderful. How big is your staff?
I have 2 full-timers and we have a lot of contractors, but my 2 full-timers are they get all of my attention right now.
Sure.
And we had intentions of adding 1 more, but we're going to postpone that until probably end of July now.
That's great. And just for those people watching, this is recorded because of all the technical issues, going live on Facebook. We want to make sure that we got this full segment up. So it's nice to know you were funded actually on April 15th. because that seems to
Yeah.
be something we're trying to figure out, like who's getting funded, when is it happening, and so we can let our members know that it actually is happening. So that's
Yeah,
great. Thank you.
I used a Bell Bank, which is not a small bank. I used them, but they're who had done the banking for the studio for years. And I actually turned in my application on a Friday night, and my banker was sending me stuff on Saturday, and I
Wow.
was approved Monday. And
Wow.
then we just had to update. We had an account there so long that we had to update that my dad didn't own the business anymore, and that
Gotcha.
the check wasn't going to him.
Right.
And then once we got all that paperwork worked out,
Yeah.
it came through. So we were really blessed,
That's great.
because I know that some people have been struggling with it, and I wish I knew why. I wish I knew why it came through so fast for us, so I could tell other people.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
got lucky on it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I do think from just the couple of people, this is not at all, everyone, but I have heard some of the smaller banks are kind of on it a little faster. So
Yeah.
that might be something. I don't know for sure, but that's just my experience so far.
Yeah,
So,
and as a business though, I mean, we're going to be down on revenue for spring, like that's going to happen. And personally, I'll be honest with you, where I gave myself a weekend where it sucks. I cried when I had to furlough my staff, and I'm not a big crier, and it's rough.
yeah,
And I think emotionally, we work so hard, we put everything we have into this thing, and we try to build it up, and we try to be so proud of what we're doing, and then something that's like no one saw this happening. I have 7 really big accounts in the spring, and I knew that if we lost 1 or 2, it'd be a bad year, but we would bounce back. I never thought I'd lose 7.
yeah,
and
yeah,
and I had I was really down and out on a Friday, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to take this weekend, and I'm going to give this the recognition that it deserves, because this is a rough and emotional thing. But I'm not going to wallow in it, and I'm not going to let myself get dragged down into a bad headspace, because the thing that I always kind of realize is, I know it's kind of ironic that I'll talk about working out because I'm kind of the chubby kid, but discomfort is where we find growth. When it hurts is when we're changing.
yeah,
And right now this hurts, and there's change happening, and I'm choosing to be aware of that, and I'm choosing not to let myself change into a negative person, and I'm choosing to respect the situation we're in, but I'm not going to it's not going to be the end of us, and I won't let it be. And so we're working forward through it. And some of the things that I'm excited to share with you about is really just the outside of the box thinking that we've done to create a little bit of revenue and to really shore up relationships with our clients.
Awesome. Yeah, let's jump into that. I thank you for all of that. Thank you for sharing, kind of where you guys are emotionally. I feel like everybody is in their own space, and it's hard to know what's normal right now. And so really I feel like you guys have been really intentional with a lot of your decision making in that desire to not get into that negative headspace, which is why we're chatting with you today. So let's talk a little bit about the virtual graduations that you are starting to do with the schools in your area.
Yeah, so whenever I've done a discussion with PPA, it's really easy for me, because I'm like, okay, well, this is what we've done. Here's the roadmap. Here's the thing that I've made. It's perfect. And I can't show you guys it because we're still making it.
Right.
But I want, so I want to walk you guys through the steps that we're taking, and the actions that we're taking to make sure that we can make a product that we're really proud of, and what we're doing for schools.
Okay.
So class of 2020, in Minnesota, we officially have not called off the end of school. They are not officially dismissed, but all the educators I know are kind of working under the assumption that we aren't going back. This year is going to be a wrap, and depending on the schools that we work with, one of my smaller ones is 83 kids graduating. My bigger one is over 900. So there's big swings in how many kids we have to accommodate and what we can do for them. So I'll talk in both of them kind of different ways in how we're handling it.
Okay.
So our smaller one is a charter school, 83 kids graduating. We've been photographing them for 4 years, and we do cap and gown photos in January. So all of these kids have already had a cap and gown photo.
Thank goodness.
And yeah, a couple of my other charter schools like pushed it off this year, and I'm like, really wish you hadn't done that. Like, what a great time we would have had these images that would, like, I don't think they'll push them back next year.
Right.
And so what we are doing with our smaller charter schools is we are actually working with some of the students in the school. We're kind of having a virtual graduation committee, and we're having meetings with those kids on Zoom calls, and we're kind of preparing something because we really want to be able to bring in to this production their presence, their input. We want them to take some ownership, emotional ownership over what we're doing. And so what we are doing with this school is essentially the kids are going to submit video pictures throughout the year of what life was like before COVID-19. So just high school, pep fest, homecoming, soccer practice, all the stuff that they did that made them feel normal. We're taking those videos or those pictures, and we're going to create a slideshow. And so that's going to be the opening thing. Then what we are doing is we are going to the schools, and we're going to do this the second week of May. And we are recording the executive director, the principal, the student selected staff member, the valedictorian, and the salutatorian. Now, before anyone loses their minds, that's 6 people, but we are not filming them right on top of each other. So there's going to be appropriate social distancing, and we're bringing them in, and they're going to wear their caps and gowns. We're setting up the stage like it would be for graduation, and we're going to film the speeches. We're trying to figure out if we're going to do like an MC on it still. We don't know that part. So that may be a thing, we aren't sure. Then, so all these teachers and students are going to be able to get up and have their words, so they're going to be able to share the things that they need to share with their class. And it's going to be as close to a normal graduation as we possibly can make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then what we're doing is we're having one staff member read every kid's name, and every kid's cap and gown photo is going to be scrolling through. And then we are allowing them to submit videos of them tossing the hats and candid stuff that they can kind of self-film. And we're going to create all of those segments are going to be created into a video. That video is going to the school, and on the day of their graduation, June 4th, I think they might be June 12th, this one, they're going to do a watch party on Facebook, and they're going to release this video, the full length, at the time that graduation was supposed to happen.
Nice.
And yeah, I think that's going to be a really neat thing. Some things that we took into consideration while doing this, and some of the questions I got from schools and students and parents is like, well, can we just do a live one? And we won't do it live for a variety of reasons. One, I have multiple accounts we're trying to provide this service to. I don't want to be spread too thin. I want to be able to have them run multiple days at the same time.
Gotcha.
2, I feel like if we got into splicing live feeds, even from houses, there's just so many opportunities for a connection to not work or someone not to get through. And then all of a sudden you have hundreds or thousands of people watching your video, and you're leaving yourself open for trip points.
Okay.
And our thought process was just, if we do it this way, we know the video's done. And if we load it through a social media platform, the kids, the bandwidth on Facebook, the bandwidth on Instagram can handle that. Whereas if we were trying to pipe it through the school's website, they would have to pay for additional bandwidth. It could crash servers. And so the social media platform and the pre-recorded video eliminates a lot of potential issues.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Going back to the beginning, I love that you're getting the kids involved. because, you know, we've been hearing a lot about the, you know, it's hard on them. They're missing this really big, important part of their life, you know, and kind of that, you know, big moment. And so
Yeah.
allowing them to be part of it, I think, is huge. That's fantastic, that you're getting them involved. And I do want to just also say this: you're in Minneapolis, right?
Yep.
So your stay-at-home orders, I don't think, are quite as strict as maybe some of the other more hot zones around the country, right? So I don't want anybody to get all upset that you're going into the school, and that you are just going in one at a
Yep.
time with people, and that you are staying away from them. You've got,
Yep.
you know, you can film all these from a distance. You don't have to
Yep.
be on top of them.
Exactly.
So yeah, so you're taking care of all of those things.
We're absolutely going to be aware of, and obviously, I mean, the safety of your clients is always paramount. Not in a situation like this. Don't take kids on train tracks.
Right. Yeah.
Like safety. Like, you can never put, especially like when we're working with kids in schools, we can never put that at risk. So not only the moral commitment that we have to our clients, but of course the optics. We're not going to be doing something that's going to be able to put our business in a negative light, because we aren't going to put people in an unsafe situation. So it's something we're very aware of. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the bigger school that we're talking about, because that's presenting an entirely different set of challenges.
900 kids. Like, I'm just thinking 83 in a slideshow of all of them, and like they're like that's long. So
Yep.
so you know what's great for parents is we don't have to sit in the stands, and we can actually just like maybe fast forward until we get to our kid. I did not say that out loud.
Do the rewatch on it. No, I get it. So this school, particularly this school, is one we have not done cap and gown photos with. And it's a unique situation because the kids don't even have their cap and gowns yet. They haven't even been delivered to the school, and they are not set to be delivered until the end of May, and graduation is early June. So there's a whole bunch of issues where we can't bring 900 kids into a school to do a cap and gown photo. It's not safe. It's not going to happen. Even if we could do it with some magical wand where we know that everyone wouldn't get sick, we aren't, like, transportation issues, work, life. And so we know that's not a thing. But one of the things the school has been doing, and I'm going to actually just tell people to go check it out, is if you go on Instagram, and the high school is Armstrong High School. I'll show you their little logo. It looks like this. And what we've been seeing on Instagram is a lot of schools now, kids are using their own things and publishing where they're going to school, what they're going to major in, and it's their senior pictures.
Oh, nice.
And so this account just started like pretty recently, and they have hundreds of submitted photos. Hundreds. So that's giving us an opportunity to have the pictures that we know the kids like because they post it. So we know it's their favorite photo.
Yeah.
And we're going to be able to, we have access to these images to be able to put into their presentations. Because again, we can't bring them in for a portrait session. And with these ones, with the larger schools, we are still going to, I know it's going to be time suck. I know it's going to take a long time, but I think that moment at graduation, especially when you're 18, and like it's not the biggest day of your life. It's the biggest day of your life so far. And being able to have someone get up and say your name and have your image and that little second of recognition is so important to these kids. And so we're going to go through and make sure that we have a good picture of every kid, and that we're going to read every kid's name, and we're going to give them that little moment of recognition. Because this is not as good as going to a graduation ceremony and having your family there and walking on the stage. Yeah. It's not.
It's not. You're right.
But this is.
But it's something.
This is. Oh my God! It's amazing that we're the schools. I'm so impressed by the administration and the commitment they have to these kids, where they're like, we don't want them to feel overlooked. We need to do something.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and this is the something. And I'm honored to be able to be a part of it, because I'm like, we have to figure out what, and I think this is the best solution we've been able to come up with.
Well, and it's worth noting, these are schools that you already have relationships with. So it's important that you maintain that relationship, that you're helping them through a crisis, and that you're kind of creating a solution and problem solving for them. So that's huge. Would you recommend this for people who don't have a relationship with the school to connect with them? Or
a couple of things that we didn't touch on. One, I am not donating this service. So that we are getting paid. We're not making a bunch of money off of it, but we are charging for our work, which is important. And if a school has, a lot of times we talk to schools and they say, we don't have a budget for this, or we got to do that. A lot of times you just have to remind them, you're no longer renting a facility. You don't have to print programs. You aren't buying punch and cookies for everyone. So this isn't new money. This is reallocation of funds that they already had planned for a graduation ceremony.
Okay.
So instead of spending the money here, we're taking that same money and we're producing this for you. So noting that, and also that there are other companies, big national brands and local media companies that are pitching this to my accounts. And so this is a thing that I think people are I would absolutely promote this. I would absolutely use this as an opportunity to maybe start a relationship with a school. And the other reason why we are being so intentional on having such a great product that we thought through was we want to shore up those relationships with our clients and make sure that this isn't an opportunity for anyone else to get a foot in the door.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. That's really great. So I know you're also doing some new things with your sports teams, right? Because you guys do a lot of sports.
Yeah. So we do up in Minnesota, like we're not even close to the biggest sports company up here, but we do a fair amount of teams. We do hundreds, and typically we would be photographing those right now, end of April, early May. All of those dates have been pushed back, obviously. And I don't think that's uncommon, but what we have been lucky with is that our accounts are willing to reschedule, not cancel. And
That's great.
Yeah, and what we're seeing actually, like one of our soccer leagues, they've said, if we can't start in April, we're starting in May. If we can't start in May, we're starting in June. If we can't start in June, we're starting in July. If we start in July, we're just going to do one season. We aren't going to have a spring and a fall. And so they're committed to having something. And so when I went over and I spoke with them initially, I walked in and the director, the exec person, I didn't even think about photography. And I was like, of course, because you're in crisis mode. And I understand that this is, number 950 on your list of 800 things you want to deal with. But we had to figure out a solution on what we could do that would allow us to still potentially have some of the revenue that we would have. I think our revenue is going to be off. I think our participation is going to be lower, but I'm also, half is a lot better than nothing.
Right.
And we had to take some steps to make sure that we could do it safely and that everyone knew that we were taking things seriously. So when I've taught at imaging before, I oftentimes will talk about our volume, like when we do teams, and it's this big thing where we filter in 6 teams every 15 minutes and they come through and it's like team, individual, and it's bam, 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 bam. And we'll do hundreds of teams in a day, thousands of kids, and everything's so beautiful and perfectly lit and organized, and it's great. We can't do that now. Because there's simply no way that I'm going to get 6 teams in a room plus 6 teams waiting to come into the room. We're not going to have hundreds of people mingling. It can't be. And so what we had established as a good plan, and what we're doing is, one, we typically do our stuff at schools. We are no longer doing stuff at schools. We are doing everything on private property, for the fear that a school might pull our permit.
Mm.
And on private land, we know that we'll be fine. So we're doing it not at schools. We're doing it at, there's a private school we're doing it at, a church that we're doing it at, some other things. So we know that we'll be permitted to proceed. Instead of doing 6 teams every 15 minutes at one location, we are doing 6 teams every 15 minutes at 3 locations.
Okay.
And so we are spreading people out literally across our little town. So there will be some photographed outside of the studio, some photographed at a church. And instead of doing this rack and stack, what we're going to do is we're setting up a 10 by 15 tent. That's where the teams will be photographed. And away from that tent is a different location for the next team to be queued up. So they won't be touching, talking. And then the actual photography stations are going to be on opposite ends of the field. So we're going to keep everyone super separated. But it also it also ran us into a different problem where we typically get prepaid order forms. And so people are exchanging cash and touching samples. And that, I know it's so
now we're all geeked out about that.
So we aren't going to do that also. So what we've been able to do is we use a system, we're using Got Photo for this.
Okay.
But what we're doing is the leagues are giving us contact information for every player. And then what we are doing is we are creating a password protected secure gallery of just their child's images. And that will be sent to families.
Nice.
And they will be able to view and order from that. My lab of choice is Miller's, but I know that Got Photo works with most labs. So you have some options, but with Miller's, we actually can even have it direct shipped to the client. So we never even touch it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And this is just thinking about the timeline too, just want to point out, this is going to be once the stay-at-home orders are lifted and all of that, and we're getting back. I'm also just, when you said, you're taking the teams and you're kind of moving them apart from each other, I'm just laughing because I have an 11-year-old son who plays baseball, and I'm trying to picture, those 10 boys not touching each other all the time. Like, I'm just like, oh yeah, no. It's gonna be interesting.
We're pushing everything. Currently, we're slated for mid to late June. And so our stay-at-home orders are going to be lifted as it is right now, May 4th. But we are very optimistic that middle to end of June, we should be not back to normal, but we should be functional. Like we should be able to leave home.
Yeah.
And like anything, we're pretty fluid in this. And I think that right now, being a smaller company is a huge asset to us because we're able to pivot and be creative and change and adapt to the situations that we're presented with. And I'm glad you brought up like that will be after the stay-at-home. Yes, of course, because we have to.
Right. But I also want to encourage people who are under stay-at-home orders right now, like, at least they can be making these contacts, they can be making these pitches. And so you could do a virtual, maybe not today, maybe you can't do it today where you are, but try to start lining those things up, making those contacts, so that when those orders are lifted, that you're able to get in quickly, you have a plan and you can execute that plan.
And I think that the other thing that's been really helpful for me is I have a lot of friends and mentors and peers that I communicate with daily, that we talk about what's going on. And I think the biggest thing that I've been able to have in all of this is by talking to other people and watching webinars and listening to kind of keeping my pulse on what everyone's dealing with. It allows me to be in the driver's seat, and it allows me to show my expertise as a photographer. And I'm not having a school call me and say, oh, could you do a virtual graduation for us? And I'm like, oh, I've never thought about that. We're trying as hard as we can. We don't want you to cancel. We do want your kids to have baseball pictures. So what are the things that are preventing it? Okay, well, stay at home order. Okay, so we have to wait for that to stop. So let's push it back. Okay, well, we want social distancing. Okay, so we have to break up our teams so that they aren't all together. We don't
Yeah.
want, human to human trans. Okay, so we're going to take away order forms. So what we're trying to do is we're finding all of those no's, and I'm finding a way around it so that you really
Yeah.
just, it's hard to say no because there's no reason left.
Right. Right. And it still gives them a fantastic experience and a great
Yeah.
product. So I think that's the other thing, because they're going to want this, this craziness that is, people are going to want a memory of kind of this history that we're walking through right now.
Yeah, and normalcy, going back to what it should be.
Do you
What
think
like
that kind of going through and problem solving and doing some of this, that some of that you'll keep some of that even when we're not under these circumstances?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've always said no to online proofing with sports images, and it's my own for a couple of reasons. One, in my market, we have really high participation with prepaid sales. So we hit 89%. And our revenue sharing, like by the time you start dealing with it and you start doing online sales and there's commissions and printing and all these fees can add up. And when you're dealing with a $20 order, there's not as much meat on the bones. But the other thing that I've been nervous about and what we've kind of used to not do it is I don't want to it makes me feel uncomfortable if I'm releasing a gallery with a bunch of kids' pictures in it for anyone to look at. I don't like it.
I get it. Yeah.
And when you're dealing with a public school, there's actually rules about personal identifiable, like that you can't do it. That's not necessarily the same like laws with youth organizations, but I'm holding myself to that standard with our youth stuff. And so we are not going to create a big gallery and just dump stuff in. So it's definitely going to be a little bit more work, and we're going to try it. And hopefully it's well received. Hopefully customers like it. Hopefully revenue wise, we can come out on it. But I think that we're also, so the online stuff, I think we might keep it, but we're trying it right now. And we have a great way.
Like you started with, which was, you're still doing it. You haven't done it and said, here, this is all finished, wrapped up. It worked. It's perfect. You're still working through it. So I'm sure we'll want to catch up with you afterwards and hear how everything went. But I love how you guys are being really intentional with your problem solving, trying to help your clients for where they are right now, having a heart for them, because essentially that's what you're doing. You're fulfilling that need that they have right now, which is to have a graduation and to have sports pictures, because those things are important in their life story. So thank you, Matthew, for sharing all of this. And I think it's so encouraging for our members to hear stuff like this, and helps them come up with great ideas that maybe they can implement in their communities. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll catch you guys on another episode. Thanks for joining us.